Waiters, what Valentine Day disasters have you witnessed? There was a note in our reservations that it was an engagement. They wanted champagne, a specific seat, bunch of other stuff. The server comes up to the table with something like, "So I read we're celebrating an engagement. Congratulations." Confusion from the woman. Glaring from the guy. He hadn't proposed yet. She ruined it. They came in at lunch the day after, so it was pretty empty, but it was still for a Valentine's Day date. They were both pretty nice at the beginning. The guy asked for a picture and whatnot. As the meal went on, the dude got progressively drunker, and by the time I brought the check out, the woman was gone. When the dude gave me his card, he said, "I'll give you a bit of advice. If you're taking a girl out to break up with her, do it at a McDonald's and not an expensive restaurant." I don't understand why some people think it's a thing to break up at a restaurant. Dump me in private, please. If we have plans to go out, dump me beforehand. I worked at a pretty high-end Mediterranean bistro. My second Valentine's there, it was probably the busiest night I've ever worked as a server. We had reservations that booked basically the entire restaurant, including the bar and patio, from 4 PM to 11 PM. No walk-ins were to be seated unless a reservation was cancelled or someone with a reservation didn't show up. Most of the customers were pretty understanding and either waited or simply left. One dude, however, kept pushing and pushing, asking every 10 minutes how much longer until he is seated, constantly saying how he is a regular customer and how his date is going to be there at 7. He got there at 6. We insisted that once a table was available and all the customers before him were seated, he would get a table. But because the amount of reservations, we couldn't guarantee he would even get a table at all. At about 6:50 the guy loses it, fast walks up to the hostess stand where the reservation book is, grabs the reservation book and practically runs out the front door. Now everything is going to complete crap because the only copy of the reservations for the night that is barely half over is gone. Two of the owners ran outside to follow the guy and try and get the book back, but by the time they got out he had already left the parking lot. Even better is, 2 hours later, chaos is still running rampant and the dude shows back up saying he has a reservation for 2. 3 of the 5 of the owners, all brothers, escorted the dude and his date out to the parking lot and banned him from the restaurant permanently. They even took a picture of him and posted it in the window saying, "Do not serve this man. TL. DR. Salty dude without reservation steals reservation book and then tries to come back later." I had a Section 1V day that had a marriage proposal, a 40th anniversary, and a breakup all at the same time. The breakup was the worst. The guy brought his high-class date a gift, a mini ceramic bear holding balloons. He presented it when I was at the table and she looked at it like it was a hot turd. I just knew this was not going to end well. She left at the end of the meal and must have said something because he stayed at the table for another 40 minutes, head down and crying. I felt bad. He saw the celebrations going on at the other tables. He proposed. She said no. He cried and tried to change her mind for 20 minutes while she sat there stony-faced. She finally got up and walked out. He paid and left in tears. Why are there so many people proposing to people they've not discussed marriage with before? It blows my mind. I was eating in a fine dining establishment, Chili's, several years ago. In the next booth was a really young guy who had a big bunch of roses on the seat next to him. He kept looking at his watch, looking at the roses, and popping open a ring box for a peek at the ring. He did this for a half hour or so, then began calling and texting someone, presumably his girlfriend, over and over. As we were waiting for our check, he hands my wife the roses, mumbled something, and walked out. Poor guy. Not waitstaff, but I used to work front desk at a hotel. One Valentine's Day I was working the night shift, and this woman comes down with a cut above her eye looking like she just went a few rounds in the ring with a boxer. Woman starts sobbing and asks us to call the cops, which we do immediately. Turns out this girl's boyfriend just beat the crap out of her during a fight, and from what I could tell this probably wasn't the first time. So after the cops show up and haul the dude off, my manager offers her a different room on comp as we need to leave the guy's stuff where it is for him to pick up the next day. She accepts, and I go up with the woman to help her collect her stuff and move to the new room. There were a bunch of bottles of alcohol in the room, and she donated them to the front desk staff. I got a bottle of Hypnotic and some vodka. Manager got a bottle of Patron. Cherry on top of everything. The dude's wife called later that night saying someone had stolen his card as he was out of town on a business trip. Never one to defend an abuser. I told her where she could find her husband. Fun times. These two were on a date and the guy went to go use the bathroom. The girl just up and leaves after he went to the restroom. When the guy came back he sat around for a while until asking his waitress where she went. She replied with saying that she left. The guy then asked the waitress if she would go on a date with him. The waitress said no. Not a waiter, but I was a pastry chef at this big resort in Cape Cod. We got a special order from this guy who was coming in for his anniversary Valentine's Day. He wanted his dessert to have "Will you marry me" written on it so he could pop the question when it came out. He called ahead to the front and back kitchen. Even came in himself that morning to make sure it was good to go. The whole crew was behind him. We had cooks all night coming in to ask if it had happened yet. I wrote the inscription on the plate and dressed it to the nines with gold leaf and expensive chocolate. I'm taking a picture of the plate just before it's set to go out and notice our head waiter come in with a weird look on his face. He says plainly they don't need it. She broke up with him before the entrees hit the table. Ruthless. A guy did a backflip and asked a girl to be his Valentine. She declined. I walked up to him and asked if he was fine. He said it took him a week to perfect. I feel for this guy, man. Hope he found someone. I used to be a waiter in a 5-star restaurant. It was my first week. One guy was about to propose. It was obvious by how much he was sweating he was drenched. I tried to make them both relax. They went on to finish up their meal. As soon as the cake arrived he then went on one knee. She stood up. Suddenly he vomited right on her high heels. After the shock of what just happened she still ended up saying yes. A guy proposed to his girlfriend and she said no. The guy threw his arms up and ran out of the building. Later, while waiting for someone to pick her up, she told us it was completely out of the blue because they'd only been dating for a few months. Another V-Day, a guy raised a huge fuss over the fact that we wouldn't serve liquor to his underage girlfriend. I'm certain you mean he threw up his hands momentarily in exasperation, but I can't help picturing him running out of the restaurant arms straight up Kermit the Frog style. 16 years in hospitality gives you some good stories. The most awkward. My first job as a waitress, a guy wanted to propose to his girlfriend. He came in 2 months before to book and had everything figured out. He planned to pop the question during dessert. We had champagne, balloons and sparklers prepped for the big moment. The time comes. He drops to one knee, gives a speech about his love for her. He asks, she says no, puts the ring in her bag, finishes her dessert and leaves. Quite possibly the most awkward thing I have had to witness alongside around 200 other people. The manager gave him everything for free. He felt that bad for him. Cringed inside every time I saw him after that. The most fricked up. I was working as a duty manager and one of the tills kept dropping off the network. As I was trying to fix it I could clearly hear the conversation of the table by the waiter's station. It started out sweet enough with her excitedly telling him she was pregnant. He went quiet and didn't say anything for a bit and then asked her what the plan was. She said she was keeping the baby. He said he didn't want kids and had told her this. She got upset and said she thought he'd be happy and change his mind when he found out. By this point I've fixed the till, but I'm unable to step away from this car crash. Turns out she stopped taking the pill without telling him, thinking she could turn him around. He said he knew she could be a little nuts sometimes, but this was next level. He told her it was over and she could send someone to collect her things as he wanted nothing more to do with her. He called me over to pay the bill and just left. The guy never even shouted. He just calmly went frick this and noped out of there. I couldn't even look her in the eye. Just left her to leave in her own time. The funniest? Managing hotel room service where there was a Valentine's package that included getting each course of the special menu delivered to your room. More than a few couples thought it was a good idea to call for the next course and then start the lovemaking. Having to help with deliveries as reception fricked up the bookings. I had the privilege of people answering the door naked, seeing adult toys strewn around and one where the other members of the threesome were carrying on in the background. After complaints of similar instances from my team I had to take action. I ended up having to call the offending guests and tell them if they could not respect my team by answering the door in at least a closed dressing gown they could come down and collect the rest of their meal from the restaurant. Bonus from the same night. Had to call an ambulance for a woman with a dislocated shoulder. The guy admitted that they were trying to recreate a B-type scene in the shower using conditioner as the CM. He slipped in the conditioner and fell on her. Puts the ring in her bag. That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. I served at a Japanese hibachi restaurant and once had a couple come and the dude dumps her after the meal. She then gets up and throws up a trail probably a good 20 feet as she runs to the bathroom. The dude got up and left the girl and I was left to clean the mess. Had a couple sign divorce papers and cry a bunch. Not my table, but back in my Olive Garden days, we had a man who looked to be in his mid-20s tap his empty wine glass with a fork to call for attention of the surrounding strangers, then get down on one knee with silver band in hand, and ask his girlfriend Day to accept this promise ring. She looked horrified start to finish. Old man proposed to old woman. He tried to get off the chair to kneel, tripped and fell and I assume broke something since he couldn't get back up and we had to call an ambulance. My manager had to drive her teeth to the hospital separately because she had taken them out to eat her soup, Lord knows why, and left them on the table in the confusion. Because she had taken them out to eat her soup, Lord knows why. Some of the adhesive products used to keep denture in the mouth really can't take much heat. Assuming the soup was hot, the adhesive would just turn into goo and drip in her mouth in addition to not holding the dentures in. A 16-year-old boy proposed to a 15-year-old girl with a cheap ring and the whipped cream of her dessert. She said yes. So romance isn't quite dead yet. Not a waiter, but in my strip club bouncer days we had one of our regulars get suited up and bring flowers in one V-day to try and woo one of the dancers. It did not work. Pro tip, if every time you all hang out it involves you giving her money, she is not into you. Bus boy on Las Vegas Strip. An attempted proposal. Dude tries to set up sign with GF's friends for her to show up and see the ring near a fountain. Duck stole the ring. They found it 2 hours later as he dropped in the fountain. She still said yes. Free drinks were given. Untitled Goose Game. Had a man and woman sharing dessert and the man playfully put a bit of the ice cream on her nose. She then did the same and he did it back once more but with a different flavor of ice cream. She flipped out at him because you know I like chocolate the most, why would you waste it you idiot. In the end she stormed out cause the man couldn't comprehend how much she was blowing up the situation. TLDR. Man put ice cream on woman's nose, she is fine with it the first time, the second time she rages and leaves. Yeah, sounds like she's got a lot of baggage hidden somewhere. Back when I served food at one of those super touristy seafood restaurants, I worked a Valentine's Day double shift. For lunch, this younger couple came in celebrating their 1-year anniversary. I offer my congratulations and proceed to do my usual spiel before taking orders. The girl is looking more and more dismayed the longer I talk. Finally I get to the end and ask if there are any allergies. She looks directly at her boyfriend and states, "Yes, I'm allergic to fish and shellfish." Then looks over at me very sad. I made sure every aspect of her meal was fine for her, but it was that look of we've been dating a year and he still takes me to a restaurant that could kill me that really did it for me. That reminds me when my parents got me a huge strawberry filled cake with strawberries on it for my 25th birthday. I'm deathly allergic to strawberries. I was working for a higher-end chain steakhouse in the northwest corner of Greater Los Angeles in the Valley. Valentines is obviously one of the top 5 busiest days of the year for us. We did about 500 covers between 5 and 10 PM. It's also a restaurant with a very open concept floor plan. Booths along the 4 walls of the restaurant and an array of tables in the middle with no partitions or anything between them. A younger couple, maybe mid-20s, dressed to the nines came in shortly after we opened and were seated in a table basically in the dead center of the dining room. They were very friendly and pleasant and I could tell that for them, dining at our restaurant was a really special treat, so I did everything in my power to make it special for them. When they're done, probably around 7, I brought their check which was around $300. When I came back to pick it up the guy had a super embarrassed look on his face and he said he thinks he left his wallet in the car and the woman, who is embarrassed for him, doesn't have anything with her because her dress had no pockets and she didn't bring a purse. So he goes out and 5 minutes later comes back in looking pale as a ghost. He has left his wallet at home and asks if he can call back later with payment info. My GM won't let this fly because there's no collateral of any sort he can leave, so the guy has to drive home to Burbank to get his wallet while the woman waits, with her hair done and her red lipstick and her pretty dress, in the middle of the dining room on Valentine's Day. Now, on the best day with no traffic, never happens. It's at least 40 minutes each way from our restaurant to Burbank. She was there for almost 2 hours waiting for this guy. We were all so embarrassed for her that the staff kept discreetly slipping her drinks and little amuse-bouche bites from the kitchen. It was one of the most awkward things I've ever seen in a restaurant. When he finally got back, he was super apologetic to us and to her. He paid the check and tipped like 30% and they left. It was pretty obvious it was an honest mistake, but I still think about that couple from time to time and wonder how things worked out for them. That's why you always do the triple pocket tap. A couple sitting at the bar were enjoying their night out. The man got up from his bar stool and left for the bathroom, as his girlfriend was alone and absolutely wasted at the bar. A random woman approached and revealed that she recently matched with the woman's boyfriend on Tinder and had hooked up a week earlier. The drunk girlfriend refused to believe this story, so the woman showed her his Tinder profile and their conversation. The boyfriend returned to her drunk, sobbing and screaming girlfriend. I felt like I was watching a reality TV show. It was incredible. The poor girl was basically carried out of the bar by her boyfriend of 3 years, whom she just discovered has been cheating on her for who knows how long. It was the most dramatic moment I have ever experienced, and it was absolutely none of my business. In college I waited tables, and Valentine's Day was always a good one in terms of tips. I once saw a couple come in to eat. Halfway through the dinner, the man's wife shows up to surprise the couple. The wife took the wine bottle and poured the remnants on the husband's head, took off her ring and told the girlfriend she could have him. He tipped me a $100. You gotta think that your wife might think something is up when you're busy on Valentine's Day. I set my hair on fire and spilled a full still on a lady. I work in a causal fine dining steakhouse. Luckily for me, the lady I spilled the Stella on was super understanding, and her husband said from across the table, well, now she has to take her pants off. So that could have gone worse for me. Not really much of a disaster, but last year my work called me up. Hey buddy, we know you're single, can you come in as an extra shift tonight? No, I have a date with your wife. I was working as a waitress in a sushi restaurant, and Valentine's Day was an all hands on deck shift. This guy I had just started seeing wanted to go out, but I told him that working in food service, you never get Valentine's Day off, and we just have to celebrate the day after or the weekend after. Nope. He got so upset that he went and asked a different girl out, came to the restaurant I worked at on the day and sat in my section. He then proceeded to spend the entire evening making a fool out of himself and making his date uncomfortable as he tried to make me jealous. Needless to say, we didn't go out again. Ever. IDK, but I'll find out Friday cause I work a freaking double, and it's Applebee's. Godspeed, my friend. I was working at a corporate sports bar that specialized in chicken wings. V-Day, like most days, was insanely busy. As the evening winds down, someone calls in saying they're a professional food critic and demanded to speak to the manager. After a 15-minute call, the manager tells us the critic rated us a B and said the food was good, but the service sucked. He said he would leave that last part out of his review if we comped his meal and gave him vouchers for free meals in the future, but he refused over and over to say where he worked. Confused, the manager talked to the server, who confirmed that the guy ate alone, ran her around ragged while shamelessly hitting on her, and left 0 tip. He wrote his phone number on the tip line. Thirsty B wanted free food because the server didn't call him immediately for a date. Saw a couple have a full-on argument at a restaurant. I wasn't their server, but the table was directly in the center of the restaurant and they were certainly loud enough for everyone to hear. My manager kindly asked them to leave, and the guy's response was to yell, "I've been wanting to do that crap for 2 years now," and stormed out. 2 failed marriage proposals on the same Valentine's Day. The first one simply said, "No, I can't do this," and walked out. The second one stared like a deer frozen in the headlights for an excruciating 30 seconds before muttering, "Let's talk about this later." They stayed for the rest of their 6-course V-Day special dinner, eating and making painful small talk. If you aren't 100% certain the person will say yes, then your relationship is nowhere near a point where getting engaged is an option. A girl that I worked with went to lunch on Valentine's Day at an expensive restaurant her boyfriend had gotten a reservation for. She got dressed up nice, was going on about how sure she was that he was going to propose. He broke up with her. You have been visited by the romantic doggo. Comment love is magic so you never fall in the friend zone. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.